The left's net of censorship continues to expand. In other words, it's getting worse. It's reaching absurd proportions. Here are some of the topics that you can't candidly talk about. Number one, you can't talk about election fraud. Immediate ban across places like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and the Google-owned platform. You can't talk about a number of aspects of COVID-19, not merely the vaccine or treatments, but you can't even talk about the lab leak theory, as I found out myself when Twitter flagged or threatened to flag a series of videos that didn't talk about vaccines, but talked about lab leaks. You can't talk about BLM and racial politics in open discussion. You can't talk about the trans issue. If you say anything negative about the so-called protected groups, you're flagged, you're demonetized, you're deplatformed, you're suspended, you're kicked off the platform altogether. And now at YouTube, they've added climate change. So when you read the guidelines, and these are extensive guidelines, it's very clear that what they mean by misinformation, what they mean by hate is anything that disagrees with them. They're not worried about hate directed at our side. They're not worried about misinformation put out by the left. It's a massive double standard. Essentially what they're saying is this is our playground and you're going to play by our rules. And that's the way it is. Now, this puts us as conservatives in a very bad position. Why? Because they're preventing us from communicating with our own side. Think of the helpless feeling you have when the other side controls. You can almost say it's like a military strategy. They're cutting off the roads and bridges that allow you to move from place A to place B, rhetorically speaking. Now, it's not enough to deal with this. By the way, this is something that we face, right here on this very podcast. And I'm really not used to it. I'm used to speaking my mind. I'm used to being able to say what I think. And this idea of having to operate within guided parameters or else, the podcast itself wouldn't be viable if it was pulled off all these mainstream platforms. Advertisers wouldn't advertise. I probably couldn't even do it. So as a result, Debbie and I, we have this daily conversation. We go through the items and Debbie will warn me. She's the producer. After all, that's her job. She'll be like, if you say that, you could be taken off YouTube. If you say that, you could be flagged on Facebook. And so what you have is not only this elaborate regime of censorship, but the equally dispiriting and, to me, infuriating regime of self-censorship. So what I do in the podcast is I go as far as I can, but I don't go as far as I want to. And so this has been rankling at me now for months. And as I say, the problem is getting worse and it's time to do something about it. Take some steps. Now, it's not enough to wait for lawsuits. Oh yeah, there's some state laws that are going to be imposing some penalties. That's good. Texas, Florida, other states are starting to move in on these big tech censors. That's helpful. Trump has a big lawsuit that is weaving its way through the courts. That's helpful. But what can we do about this now? Many people, in a sense, are doing nothing. Even though we do have alternative platforms. We have Parler, which had been knocked on its back, but is now up and running. But a lot of people are like, they've kind of lost the habit of going on Parler. Well, go on Parler, set up your account. Getter, an excellent platform, very functional. I really like Getter. I post stuff every day, and I post stuff there that I don't post elsewhere. Set up your account and don't wait until the sword of Damocles falls on your head and you're banned on Twitter and banned on Facebook. And then you say, maybe I should go to Getter. No, set up now. Protect yourself early. Think ahead. That's very important. I'm thinking ahead. By the way, when I heard about Trump's platform, and I'm excited about this. This is Trump's platform called Truth Social, coming out apparently early next year. I wrote Trump's man, Dan Scavino, and also Liz Harrington, who's Trump's communications director. So I'm going to be working with those guys to get in early on that platform and establish a voice there, because I think that could potentially be huge. I've also discovered an amazing platform. It's called Locals. And I'm jumping into Locals sort of with both feet, and I'm doing it starting today. So here's what I'm going to do on Locals. It's a subscriber platform, which means that you subscribe to my page, and you get exclusive content that absolutely doesn't appear anywhere else. In fact, you're getting Dinesh Unfiltered, Dinesh Uncensored, and Dinesh Unchained. Tommy's like, oh no, this is bad. I may have to watch that one. No, you are not the producer of my content on Locals. So, daily I'm going to post essentially uncensored videos. I'm going to address all the taboo subjects. There will be, in fact, no taboos. I'm going to also give you kind of behind the scenes look, not just at my work, but at my life, at kind of the conversations, discussions, the dilemmas we deal with every day. And a behind the scenes look also at this podcast and at the movies I'm working on and all kinds of stuff. I'm also going to go into a little bit of how-to, because people often ask me, hey, Dinesh, how do you write articles? What's the way to write a really good article? How do you write a book? How do you make a movie? How do you give a speech? How do you win a debate? How do you argue? How do you defend your views in normal conversation against people? How do you deal with people who are friends or relatives and you want to be a little sensitive? You don't want to lose the friendship. You don't want to break off communication with the relative. How do you handle those kinds of issues? I'll give you some tips for that. I'm going to open up the whole world of great books and great ideas. And this may seem like safe territory, but not anymore. Even this is taboo in universities. Even this is taboo. Just open conversations about ideas and how they relate to what's going on now. And finally, a weekly live Q&A. A Q&A in which I'm on for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and I'll take questions directly and I'll be answering them in real time. So this is a very interactive platform. Here's how you do it. You go to dinesh.locals.com. So that's my username, if you will, on Locals, dinesh.locals.com, and check it out. I think you're going to find it a great platform, a terrific alternative to all the other platforms that I'm on, with fresh material being posted every day. Censorship has become intolerable. I've got to do something about it. You've got to do something about it. Let's do it together.